Okay, right. So welcome back. Right. So this session, the focus is on universal design concepts. Okay, right. So how do you, or what are the principles required to make your designs accessible for all, by all? Principle of equitable use. I think many more principles they may talk. And the speakers for the day, right? It's a team of size three, all my BTech alma mater, my own project students, right? Pranav Parameshwaran, right? Just a random recall test for me. Roll number 36, Abhinand Rajagopal, roll number 9, and Kaushik, roll number 10. Okay, roll number doesn't make sense for you, for me it makes sense. Right? So all these three are my favorite, or among the favorite set of students of past alma mater. Okay, and they bring with them a rich both industry and academic experience, right? I think Pranav has had a long internship with Ericsson, which has also got, and he's slowly commencing his professional career with Ericsson Research, right? So, and he works in data analytics, data sciences, and equally good on the design front as well, right? So, Pranav is one member of the team, right? Second, Abhinand, right? So, he was also my project student who worked in the area of transfer learning, right, under my and Mercy's guidance, right? And there's excellent work from them, which is possibly nearing some communication stage to a scientific body. Okay. Yeah, I remember roll numbers here, right? Because everything else is what indexable if you remember the last two digits. Rest all is reconstructable. Right? That is why students also enjoy. Okay. Right. So Abhinand is starting his career with GAVS Technologies, which is again, right, a company which works in the data science and other application development stuff, headquartered in the US, right? And he also has deep industry experience, right? I am not sure. I think he interned at Checkatronics. If I'm correct, Abhinand can bring me there. I hope it was my referral, right? And he did excellent work at Checkatronics or Burning Glass, if I'm recalling it well. Right? So Abhinand will be the second member of the team, right? And these are really sharp kids here, right? BTechs. They are no longer BTechs, they are professionals. And the third guy, N. Kaushik, right? Role number 10, part of the same project team which we guided, right? I think he again brings in what industry experience in the form of text analytics. He worked for a company called SPI Global, okay, right? So which was basically into textbook, your editorial requirements of paper publications, textbook publications, and all, right? So that company specializes on natural language processing and text processing. So his work was on that, and I was happy to note that he has cleared gate with an All India rank of around 80 and is shortly to commence his MTech program of study at IIT Madras. We are all IIT, old IIT graduates here, okay, right, long back. Right? So I was even more happy to see one of our own students venture into our own campus. Okay, right? This is also our campus, but our parent campus is IIT Madras. In fact, we were mentored by IIT Madras for a long time. First 4 years, prepared at A&M Kanchipuram, we were guided by IIT Madras faculty only. So we owe a lot to whatever we are today. Okay, right? So I was happy to know that Kaushik is proceeding to his higher program of study under our own faculty there. Right? So all three are excellent, right? And when is the exam? And it will be only from your PPTs or all the presentations that are happening. Okay, no. I think my PPTs it is only around 3-4, right? The talks. I think you should refer to all the course or the workshop talks, ma. Okay, right? But my course slides, which Mercy will upload, I'm actually giving it only as an additional material. Don't. I'll avoid the word exam. Just see it as an assessment or one more round of interaction. Okay, right? But do have a look at the around 3 to 4:30 tomorrow, ma. Yeah, I know because my presence is random inside the workshop. It is better you ask it now, right? Around 10 to tell you around 3 to 4:30. So 2:30 to 3 we'll have a quick winding up tomorrow, right? So 3 to 4:30 so that you will, because we will have some issues of internet and all, so that at least half an hour or 15 minutes lead time we have towards the end. Okay. So tomorrow's post-lunch session will be more of wind up. Sir, WhatsApp group we don't have, right? So my sincere request is, because it's a fag into the workshop now, starting to update on the WhatsApp, right? That will may give open or may open up a Pandora's box for confusion where it's getting updated. My sincere request, at least next 2 days, do check your email, right? The registered email with AICT, or if you have another email, my scholars don't mind updating the bulk mailing list, but please do check your emails, sir. Okay, right? Because you're almost reaching a fag into the workshop, right? And if you are missing it there, be available in the room at least. My links on the room as well, in the classroom or in the Gmeet room. Okay, right? But I don't think we can pass on the PPTs and all in the room. That you'll have to go and refer G Drive, the Google Drive. Okay, right? So let me not drag too much, right? So we have excellent set of three people, right? Ranging from that. I think all three are beautifully academically bent of mind and also have got the industrial exposure as well, right? So without much delay, right, I'll hand it over to Pranav and team.
Thank you, sir.
Pranav, you can start.
Thank you, sir. Yeah.
Yes, thank you. So, thank you, sir, for introducing us. And again, good morning to everybody. I think Abhinand will be shortly presenting.
Proceed.
Yes, sir.
If you feel you can be also live on the chat. If you feel something will help them with some additional text input, you can keep pinging there. Okay.
Yes, sir. Sure, sir.
No break today. You will have, madam. I think you are meaning lunch break is there. Any other break? Yeah, Abhinand, start. So tea break was given for afternoon. Tea you can have it parallelly, parallel process.
Okay. So I'll be starting. I hope the screen is visible. So again, good morning to all. And today we are going to be talking about a category of design, which will actually deal with making the products which we are designing to be usable by a wide range of users rather than only specific people. So this is what we call universal design. Abhinand, you can go next slide. Yeah, next. So the broad structure is given here. First, we have the introduction to universal design. Then we have the 7 main principles which we'll be covering, and then we have some case studies which we'll be discussing. Next. So I think this single picture. Yeah, Brian, go next. Yeah. Okay, so I think this single picture gives us a very good idea of what all this universal design is about. So basically, if you see the picture, you can pretty much understand, like there is a person on a wheelchair and there are 2 people on top of a step, and they are wondering why this person is not able to like cross the step. The main idea is that just because it's easy for them to use the product, which is the step here, doesn't mean that everyone will be able to use the same product with the same amount of ease of use. So yeah, that's the main gist about universal design. Thanks. Abhinand, you can go next. Yeah. So I would just like to have a very short discussion about this question. I think this will pertain to everybody. Like, have you had any experience of having confusion or finding difficulty to use any product or design where you felt that it was easier for the others? Like suppose somebody told you about a product that they really liked, and then you saw like you tried using it, but it was difficult for you. Is there you can ping in chat or you can talk it.
It can be related like language difference, culture difference, or related category. Like for example, if you go to some other country and you find some difficulty.
Yeah. Yeah, so basically, yeah, his example was that if you go to some other country, right, and you try using anything there, and it is in a different language. Suppose you go to Japan, and if the services are in Japanese, you'll not be able to understand and you'll not be able to use it. So cases like that. So this is what universal design is all about. So yeah, you can go next step.
And I also have one more example. That, I'm the person. So through my life, I've had difficulty trying to communicate with people. So especially
Yeah.
when study. So now we are on the right mode. I'm like video calls and
Yes.
video call, and
Yes.
so it is like very difficult for me to listen to someone speaking. So that one difficulty I've experienced. But now we have closed captions, like subtitles or transcripts. So that was very easy for people to listen the communication.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, as Abhinan told, like he has a hearing impairment, so it will be difficult for him to actually speak. But I think, but his example of that, now they have actually provided like closed captions, which will be talking about more in the coming session. Where like, even if you not speak clearly, right, you can still the closed captions can give you the subtitles. That way you can still read it. So these are all some of the examples of universal design. And Abhinan, you can go next. So yeah, so the main basic introduction with universal design, I'll just very quickly go through this. It's basically the design of products and environments to be usable by all people to the greatest extent possible without adaptation or specialization. That is, the customer should not adjust to the product. The product should be adjustable to the customer. This is the main thing. And next. Yeah, so the three main fields, rather, in universal design are. We go next step. Yeah, so the first one is called disability-specific design, which is basically like the industry basically has to meet the demands of creating accessible and usable products. So concepts like barrier-free design come under this, whereby basically we try to eliminate all the barriers which inhibit people with disabilities from using our designs. So this is called disability specific design. You can go next. The next one is called assistive technology. Yeah, so the next one is called assistive technology, where it's basically, I'll give an example. It's like you buy a new mobile phone, right, and on top of that you buy some add-ons which are like the mobile cover. So these are like assistive technology. These are products which are designed with a very specific goal in mind for a very specific requirement. These are called assistive technologies. And the next one.
Kaushik, if you don't mistake, sorry, yeah, okay.
Yes, sir.
Because I stopped Pranav pinging. Okay, just for I didn't want to mention it explicitly because I don't see that as a limitation, but because this is a new audience, I forgot. Okay, just for the benefit of the participants or for the knowledge of them, right? Abhinand is one of the toppers of my class for the past, right? An excellent academic potential and intellect, right? And I see him as a really blessed student, right? With some slight limitation, or he's differently able, as we put it, okay, right? But I have seen him. In our institute, we do have this practice of giving a differential scheme, right, for such kids, right, who are differently able. But he was one among the very rare setup who said, "I will never take that. Right, I will compete with the normal setup itself." Okay, right, and I think he possibly is one among the top 5 rankers in the class, right? Should be around 9.2 or something in CGPA. Okay, right? Now I know CGPA is not the beginning and end of it all, right? But I see him as a blessed guy, right? So whatever, in case there is some clarity issue, his fellow speakers will map it on the chat. Correct, Pranav and Kaushik?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
No issues. No, I didn't mean you thought it as an internet issue. I understand. But I meant to see such a talented kid who said spot on in the first year, I don't want a differential scheme. I will compete with the rest as per your normal scheme. Okay, right? And he ended up being on the top. Thanks for sorry, Kaushik.
No issues. Okay, I'll just continue. And so again, as I said, these are the 3 main fields of universal design. Yeah, again, you can go next. So yeah, UD is basically universal design. Next. So I would like to say some few more points about universal design, and then we'll move on to the principles. So basically, first one is universal design tries to improve the original design concept by making it more inclusive. That's one of the main ideas about universal design, where it tries to include everybody. It doesn't exclude anybody based on the disabilities. So the second one is universally designed products can have a high aesthetic value. That is there. And then universal design is much more than just a new design, right? As time is going on, right? As we are bringing up more and more new innovative products, there is another huge essential need, that is those products should be even though the products are innovative, those products should be usable by everyone. They should be accessible by everyone, and they should be usable by everyone. That is another main point. And universal design does not aim to replace it doesn't aim to completely replace the design, basically, of the products targeted specific markets. It's not a complete replacement. It's just an augmentation of the existing products, so that it is more useful. And universal design is not it just isn't it's not the same word as complying with accessible design standards. So we have design standards, and we have under them we have like design standards which talk about like how accessible a product should be. It is not simply just saying that my product is clearing all those check boxes. It is we can go more beyond that to make it even more useful. Yeah, I mean next. Yeah, the next one is universal design benefits more people than older people and people with disabilities. This is again a very great misconception, is that this universal design is mainly aimed upon older people, people who don't know how to use technology, or people with disabilities. It's not just only for them. It's as I told, we'll see more examples where even simple examples will be there, which we will face, like that. And then universal design can be undertaken by any designer, not just a specialist. And universal design should be integrated throughout the design process. It's not just we completely design the product, then at the end we just keep one small check for whether it's universal designed or not. It should be integrated throughout the design process, so that there's a much more deep. It's deeply inside the design, so that it will be more useful by everyone. And then universal design is not just about one size fits all. That is a very important point, which will come to again. So the main thing is universal design product is the goal, and universal design is the process with which we achieve that. Next. Yeah, we will have some few examples to see whether quickly see whether it's universal designed or yeah, first one. So the first one, we have a set of staircases. And I'll give some time. Like anyone can ping in chat or tell whether why you think this is a good example of a universal design, or it's a bad example of a universal design. Whether it's designed keeping in mind the universal design or not. You can ping in chat or you can talk. It's a bad design. Yeah. Can you just quickly elaborate why you think it's a bad design? If it's taking time to type, I think you can talk. As it doesn't consider handicap person. Exactly, that's the point. So this starts, it's like it seems to go on forever, right? And there are no ramps on the staircase. So if we have people with wheelchairs, right, they cannot use the stairs and they cannot reach people. It is bad due to its irregular structure. Yeah, that is also another point. It seems to like it doesn't have a very clear structure about where it's trying to go. It's just going left, right somewhere. So that is another point. These are two main points of why this bad example, bad in terms of universities. Next one, I mean. Yeah, this is the example we were talking about before. This in Zoom and in Gmeet we have this option of closed captions, where as I speak, you can turn it on, and as I speak, you can see that the text is coming. There. It's a really great technology. And now, do you think this is a good example of universal design or bad example? Seems good. Yeah, this is again a very good example of universal design. And then I think the reason is also obvious, right? Even if you suppose even if you don't have a headphone and your speakers is not even working, then cross both together, it is good. Yes. Okay. Suppose you don't have a speaker also, right? Even if the speaker doesn't work, still you can join the meet and interact properly. So this is a really good example of universal design. Next one, Abhi. Yeah, this is in ATMs we have this right. We have to enter our key, and the keypad is this. Do you think this is a good design or bad design? Right, exactly. So this is again a really good design, because people with visual impairments can still use ATMs. ATMs are really important. Right? We need to withdraw money. So they should not be excluded, and so we have Braille in this so that they can use it easily. Next one. This is the last one. This is like a user manual for a trimmer. Yeah, even if you don't understand English, we can change the language. Yes, exactly. That's the thing. Nowadays in YouTube and other video sets also, you have closed captions everywhere, and they give you in the language that you want also in many videos. So it will be very useful. Yeah. So for the last one, do you think it's a good or bad? The user manual. It's a good one. Okay. Why do you think it's? As it is a new product. Okay, okay, that actually wasn't the thing I was going for. But again, design is subject to, so no one is wrong. It's, though it has exactly, that was the point I was going for. It has too much text, too much of text. You can turn around as per the preferred language. The user manuals, that is one advantage. Like they provide it in a lot of languages. But again, the problem with this specific one is there is too much text. No, like it's just a trimmer, and no one is going to read so much of text to understand how to use it. So that's why in many manuals nowadays they try to include as much pictures and illustrations as possible when compared to text. So yeah, this is just a very short introduction about what is all about universal design. The next one again. Infographics would be better. Exactly, yes. Abhinan, you can go next. So yeah, the next one we'll be going is all about the 7 principles of universal design. Next. So we have this image which we'll be going into detail about each of the principles. So this is equitable use, flexibility, and 5 more principles. Next. Yeah, we have a very it's just an unofficial abbreviation, but I guess we can use it to easily FFTest. You can use it to remember all the names. Okay, yeah, next. Okay, so I'll start out with the first principle. Now before you have 2 images, the first one and second one. Again, these 2 images are bad examples of universal design. Can you guess like why it's bad? Okay, sorry. It's these 2 examples are good examples of universal design. Can you guess like why both are good? Both are separate reasons. So the first one is a person. Yeah, exactly. It's inclusive. More detail would be like the first image is about a person with wheelchairs, and he's trying to cross a door. And in this case, they are providing automatic doors. So that will be very helpful, right? So they don't need to push it. So they can easily go through the door. That's the first one. The second one is the anti-thing to the example we saw earlier, where they are now providing ramps in the staircase. So now people with wheelchairs can use it. It's more inclusive. Ramp for wheelchair, exactly. So Abhinan, you can go next. So this first principle is called equitable use. Next step. Yeah. So the design should be useful and marketable to people with diverse abilities. So I think that's very self-explanatory, and I think from the examples you can understand what is the meaning of equitable use. So next. Some other examples for this would be the left image is an image I think many people would have already seen. It's to check whether people have color blindness or not. If you can, people with color blindness, right? They will find it very hard to differentiate between certain colors like light blue and light orange, like those. The first example you can see there's a 12. So when we are designing our products, right, especially for things like in website design, we have to think a lot about colors. I think there is another session scheduled which will talk about all about colors, and this is one example of equitable design where even if a person has color blindness, they should still be able to use the website design. Suppose they're not able to view a button or some text because of their disability, it's really bad. So in case of website design, this first one is called high contrast, where we try to give colors in very high contrast so that it's easily visible to everyone. And the second one is alternate texts for images. This is also really useful. If you go to many websites, like go to Amazon, and if you try hovering on top of some of their images, right, you will get some text actually. So that way also, even if it's not clearly visible, you can still understand like what they're trying to convey by the image, like what is the product all about through that alternate text. So this is all about equitable text. Next, equitable use. Next. Yeah, then we can go next. Yeah, next. Some broad guidelines that I talked about was we have to provide the same means of use for all users, identical whenever possible, equivalent when not. It's not like as I told earlier. I told that we should not completely redesign the product for each specific use. We should try as much to keep a very the central product core of the product should be same. The core usability of the product should be same for as many people as possible, and we should slightly augment it whenever necessary to make it usable for everyone else, and then avoid segregating or stigmatizing any users. Again, when we design a product, we wanted to reach as many customers as possible. So we should never should try not to segregate customers, or we should try not to like stigmatizing them. And then provision for privacy, security, and safety should be equally available to all users. Again, some products where there's a concern, right? And then, as I told, we have to augment the product, but at the same time, we should not compromise on all some of the core things like privacy, security, and others. Making the design appealing to all users. Again, this is the main core concept about what is equitable use. Yeah, then we can go next. Abhinan, you can go next. Yeah. And then coming back to the color examples, this is just a simple example. There is one online game called Word Feud game, where they provide this, like the left part of the image, you can see that there are a lot of colors, right? And they have designed those colors such that it's like highly contrasting. And on top of that, what they have provided is, even if the people can't identify the colors, to see that there are two different tiles, right? They have provided like a text on top of it, basically like a code, like you have DW, DL, TL, all that stuff. So they can easily. The right part is actually the view from the view of if a person has color blindness, there are a lot of types, but one of the types is like this. They can't differentiate between orange and blue, so both will look similar to green. So in that case, they have provided text on top of it so that they can easily identify. So this is one great example of
Actually,
next.
the thing is, what give it a very high contrast difference. Like, that is very opposite to, so it's easier, it isn't possible for a group of color brightness.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So yeah, they are, in the left also they have provided high contrast between the colors. So it's like on top of it they are giving text. So that's it. Yeah, you can go next. Yeah, from now on, Pranav will continue.
Yeah, thank you, Kaushik. So, hello everyone. Good afternoon. I'll be continuing the principles. So, as we can see from this image, there are like two images. So, from this, so can someone tell me that what can they perceive from these images? What do they feel like? What does an image convey? Uh, Okay, so I'll tell you. So from the first image, you can see that the scissors are designed for both right and left hand users. So you can, yeah, two ways perspective, correct. So the user can hold the scissors in both left hand and right hand. So it is flexible to both kinds of users. So in the second image, if you can see, yeah, second image has three knobs. So we can say that these three knobs means we can control the volume, safe and multi-use. Exactly, that's the point. It's multi-use and safe. So the principle is known as flexibility in use. So the product should be flexible enough so that the user or the consumer have the control of what they want. So they can use as per their requirements. So the design accommodates a wide range of individual preferences and abilities. So that's what this principle says. So as many people have mentioned, it's a two-way perspective and a safe and multi-use. So that's what it conveys. Yeah. So Abhinand, next. Yeah. So from a software perspective, if we see, we have seen in many Word documents and Google Docs. So we have this control of having the text in bold, italics, underline. So these are few features for the text which we can control. So we we can resize the text, allow the resizing of the text for up and down and as per our requirement. So that is one principle. Yeah, we can customize it. Yeah, flexible to use or customize, exactly. Correct. And so in the next second image, if you can see, there is a slider for the brightness. So if I feel it's too bright, I can reduce or I can increase. So I have the control over it. It should not be like a static. The brightness should be always fixed, and the user cannot control. So in that way, the user doesn't have the control. So he or she will not feel comfortable while using the product. So it should be flexible and it should be more easy to use and comfortable to use. Yeah. So these are the few guidelines which we should follow when we are doing flexibility in use. So one is we should provide choice in method of use. So the user should have different choices, or they can choose whichever method they want, and we should accommodate left or right hand access. So in mobile phones also, mostly people hold their mobile phones in the right hand. So for people who hold their mobile phones in the left hand, so for that also we should support the use. So that is one thing which we should keep in mind. And we should facilitate the user's accuracy and precision. So how will they use the product, and how great or how accurate they can use the product. So that is one thing. If it is not necessary, if a feature is not necessary, it is better not to put it and confuse the customer or user. And we should provide adaptability to the user space. If the user is is new to the product, so he should his pace will be a little bit slow. So when he is using the product, he will be a little slow while using it. So we should allow that also. So that is these are a few guidelines which we should follow while focusing on this principle. Yeah, Abhinand, next. Yeah, so one design example would be the Trello app. It's a website-based Kanban style list application. So in which we can post our progress. It's a Kanban style. So Kanban is used in many industries and also to complete the progress of our product. So you can see that there are different features of adding the colors. So there are labels or colors which we can add to differentiate between few the differentiate between the progress, and also we have separate lists and tabs for the project. So here we have the customization ability, and we can choose whichever we want, like the colors and labels. So we can organize and we can prioritize the projects with flexibility. So it offers range of customizable dashboard options. So this is one great example for flexibility. Yeah, correct. Color coding. So color coding, like the labels which we see here, red, blue, green. So if we say red, that means we can say easy identification, exactly. So we can red color means we can say that it is in progress and things like that. Yeah, so that's it. Yeah, so we'll going to the next principle. Here it is from this image, what can we perceive? Can someone tell? Do it yourself manual, correct. And what more can we see? Safety, good safety. And what more? Step-by-step instruction and symbolism, exactly. So that's what it's a step-by-step instruction, and which they are exactly, so they are giving visual references or symbolism. So the user can no need to go through a text-based step-by-step process. Instead, they can visually understand how to set up or how to fix or how to construct the product. So detailed iconography, correct. Like this IKEA is a very great company for furniture. So they give this images and step-by-step instructions. So like in the first image, you need a screwdriver and a hammer, and the second image suggests that you should not keep on the floor. Instead, you should keep it on a carpet. And third is there is a adding the screw and things like that. And if we need support, we can call this customer support. So and the next image will show the where to tie the screw and what all the steps and all. So the process should be simple and intuitive. The product and the process should be simple and intuitive. So they should not confuse the customers. So we can go. Use of the design is easy to understand regardless of the user experience, knowledge, and user friendly. Correct. Use of the design is easy to understand regardless of the user experience, knowledge, language skills, or current concentration level. So what it means is that it's irrespective of the user, is like a French speaker or a Portuguese speaker, then we should have the step by step in that languages also. Or if we give a visual image, and then it will be irrespective of what the content is, the process will automatically explain it. So that's the thing. And next. So with respect to a software perspective, if we see these images, so the first one, it's saying the progress. It's showing a progress bar, so the users can understand that okay, the the application is going to load in some time, and there is option called My Content, Profile, and Account Settings. So these three features are available, and if we click on that, there will be further explanation of what we want to do if we want to change our password. So it is simple and intuitive. We can understand that okay, what it means and what is expected. And if I click log out, I'll log out from the page. So no, we don't need to think much key. Okay, if I log out, then what else will be happening and things like that. And in the navigation bar, if we see, there is the top, there is a navigation bar which will guide us to which page we want to go or where we want to go. We don't need to keep on going through some page and see okay where the content is available. So the navigation bar doesn't let the users get lost in your design application. So you can use the elements of the navigation to show hierarchy. So that is the main purpose of navigation design, and it's a very important design in web development also. So yeah. And then group elements is like you can group the elements like JSOL principles, so we can connect them with styles, colors, or group them to give a sense of related objects. So like when we group them together, we know that these all objects belong to one same category. So that's one thing. Yeah, Abhinav, next slide. So these are few guidelines which we should follow, and like the guidelines say that we should eliminate unnecessary complexity. Like I mentioned, the user should not feel lost, or they should not feel like okay, what I'm trying to do here. It should be more understandable by the users, and we should be consistent with the user expectations and intuition. So if I see something, the product designer or the product developer should think from the perspective of a customer. It should not be like okay, I perceive this feature to be used like this, so hence I will do. It should not be like that. It should be from the customer, and accommodate a wide range of literacy and language skills. So we should ensure that we accommodate all the type of language possible, or we give a visual communication for that if possible. And also we should arrange information consistent with its importance. If it is not important, it's better to keep it in a more distant place, and if it is very important, it should be more visible to the user. And we should provide effective prompting and feedback during and after the task completion. So if we say that I have clicked this, then you can see the change. If in the navigation bar, if I click a particular button, then it will redirect me to a new page. So it is giving me a feedback, okay, that the page has been redirected to this. So I know what is happening. So that is what this intuitive design means. So these are the few guidelines which we should keep when we are developing from a software perspective. And Abhinan, next. So one example would be from the MailChimp design example, MailChimp, or we would have seen in Flipkart or Amazon also, when we are setting up our price. So there will be a slider where we can decide how much do I want to pay. So that slider will help us, to identify, okay, the developer will also know that the user wants this amount or this range, and it will communicate the number to the consumer also, or the user also, and the developer also. It will reduce visual clutter. So, And there is something called progressive can compare prices. Exactly, good. So you can compare prices and you can get an idea of what I'm the user can also know, okay, this is the price range which they're providing and I am falling in this category, or I require this category of service or this product. And there is something called progressive disclosure. So let me explain about what progressive disclosure means. So progressive disclosure is a interaction design technique. It reduces visual clutter and it removes irrelevant information on the screen. It prioritizes the information to display on the screen based on the user needs and interactions. So like someone had mentioned that it can compare prices, and it is, yeah, you can automatically see which category I lie into. Exactly. And yeah, so that's it. Next slide, Abhinan. Yeah, so here we are to the fourth principle, and this image, let me explain it to you. The first one is actually a sticker from the railway from the Japan. So the colors and the images convey the destination of the place. So the first one is a mountain, and it's mentioned in Chinese and also in English. So there are colors indicate the route which the train takes. So the pink mentions these are the routes which it takes, and the orange mentions that this train will go through these stations, and the image conveys the icons convey the information. So basically this is a iconography, like one someone had mentioned, the detail iconography. Exactly. So that is one important thing. And the second image also, like in many hotels, there will be a controller for controlling the temperature. So the first example, like I mentioned, is a Nakoma line in Japan. So yeah, I will explain further in a case study. Abhinan, can you go next slide? I mean, yeah, next. Yeah, so this is called perceptible information. What perceptible information means is that you can perceive the information based on the icons provided. The design communicates necessary information effectively to the user, regardless of the ambient conditions or the user sensory abilities. So irrespective of what it is, I can understand it based on the information provided to me. So it is somewhat similar to the previous principle, but the previous principle shows that it should be intuitive and easy to use, but this is about how we perceive the information. So the perceptible information means that how I perceive about controlling this bar, or controlling or navigating myself through using these images. Yeah, so if we go through the software example, so here for the perceptible information, we can see the first image says a pie chart or bar graph and a scatter plot. So these are the informations which we can understand visually. So as a consumer or as a software developer, we can go through this visual information and we can understand. Infographics, yeah, correct. We can using the information provided through graphical visual graphics, so we can understand the what are things needed. So it provides a detailed idea of what things or which category it lies on, so it is perceivable by the user. And the second image shows like the case study one. So this is like a text or a legal document. So the you if instead of going through the full document, if we just look at the first title itself, we can understand, okay, what does this whole document or this subsection convey. So that's what it means. It means that we can understand what we are going to read now. Like in many legal agreements, most of us would have seen it's a huge 10-20 pages, and most of the time we don't read it because we don't know what it is. So if we go through the subsections, we can understand, okay, this is what they mean. So these are the legal things, and these are the few things which they are using, or the few data which they're collecting from us. So based on that, we can understand, okay, this is what I would like to give, or this I don't accept this off feature or something like that. So we can perceive as per our need, and I mean, as we can perceive the information and we can act accordingly as per our need. Yeah. So this example would like the perceptible information is like you should use different modes like pictorial, verbal, tactical for redundant presentation of essential information. So like you can, like we saw the bar graph or the pie chart. So as per the requirements, we can give the information so that the user doesn't get confused. The second example would be provide adequate contrast between essential information and its surroundings. So this means that we should give proper information, and it should be clear. It should not be confusing to the users also. So that is one thing. And then maximize legibility of essential information. Differentiate elements in ways that they can be described. That is, make it easy to give instructions or directions. So again, yeah, we should be the information should be perceivable by the users. So the user is like the main guy. We should always focus on them, and we should provide compatibility with a variety of techniques or devices used by the people with sensory limitations. So you sensory or we can say when we go to a new location also, there might be possible that we don't understand the language or the text which is written in that. So we should ensure that we give the information so that it is universal, or the any person from any location also can understand that information. So that is one important thing which we should focus on. It should be a universal design, basically. Yeah. Next, Abhinand. Yeah, so here is a design example. So I'm sure many would have seen TED talks and TED videos. So we can see that there is something called transcripts and subtitles. So transcript is, and it enables users with hearing impairments to watch the videos with video transcription. So video transcription basically means that whatever audio they speak in the video, it gets transcripted into into a paragraph, and it will show at what second this sentence was spoken or this paragraph was spoken. So I easily redirect and understand from that. So this transcriptions is very useful for hearing impairments, or also for people who don't understand that language or find it difficult to follow it quickly through the audio. So that is one option, and we can choose the language which we want. So that's a very interesting tool, the video transcription, and it's provided in many applications nowadays, like in TED and Coursera. Yeah, it's abstract. We can decide on what language we want, and we can automatically the content will come towards the user. And yeah, that's it. Next slide. Yeah. So the principle 5 here will so can someone tell me what they can understand from that image, from this image? I'll give 5 minutes.
Perspective.
Sorry.
Perspective.
Perspective. Okay, like what kind of perspective?
It is going to one point perspective.
Okay.
First
Okay.
image.
I think it is like more inclusive design made for people who visually impaired people, I guess.
Okay. Okay. Fine. Good. But like, yeah. Okay. The second. So from the second image perspective. So from the second image, what can we understand from that? So it's like a rain drainage, safety and support. Exactly. So that's what I was looking for. It's safety and support. So basically, we want the support. We want to support our user, or we want to give safety, guidelines to our users. So, Abhinand, next I'll explain. So tolerance for error. Exactly. So this is the principle. Basically, we should design our products so that we can minimize the hazards and adverse consequences of the accident or unintended actions. So this from the images I'll explain. The second image, like the rain drainage at the doorsteps, is to avoid people to get slipped. If there is a rain and we walk through it and we get slipped, it should not happen, right? So this drainage will automatically drain all the water, and so that we can be safe. So that is the main idea behind it. And this first image is like a bridge, so that the user can it's a safety bridge, like we see in airports and airlines. So this is a sturdy one, and it should ensure that the user can go from this end to that end without falling. So that is the basic idea of this two images. So we should ensure that it minimizes the hazards. Yeah, HIRA, hazard identification and risk assessment. Exactly. So that is our main objective for this principle. So we should ensure that we identify the issues and errors, and we should ensure that we ensure that in our product we fix that error, and it should be tolerant to those errors. Yeah, next slide. From a software perspective, I'll explain. Next, Abhinand. Yeah. So if you would have seen sometimes when we delete something, or when we delete some actions which are very important, we see that there is a confirmation which is asked, are you sure you want to delete this, or are you sure you want to send a request, so something like that. So this confirmation prompts ensures that the user is aware of the action which he's doing and the consequence. So these will ensure that if something happens by mistake, if he didn't intend to do it, then that can automatically be fixed. Or there is something like the undo redo option. So we should allow the user to undo something from his uh, current state, so that he can go back, so that there is a scope of exploration. So if we can explore something, then we can know, okay, these are the few features which are available, and if I don't want something, I can go back. So even in most of the transactions, they generally say that you should not if you're sure, then you should go to the next step when we are doing a bank transaction. And when we are in a current page, they will say don't refresh this page, or don't shut down this page. So because they want that we don't perform this action, so they are giving a visual indication. And if by chance we do that also, there is a backup which they do in the back end, and it will try to fix the error. So basically we should ensure that we should allow accidental hazards. So basically that's the thing. Yeah. So the guidelines which we should follow is arrange the elements to minimize hazards and errors. Most used elements should be the front, and most important ones should be highlighted. And if it is a more dangerous task or something which will create an issue, then we should highlight it accordingly. And we should provide warnings or hazards for errors, and we should provide fail-safe features also. So basically, if something mishap happens, then we should automatically trigger that execution. So that is one important thing. And we should discourage unconscious action in tasks that require vigilance. So example that when we are entering password, then if it should ensure that the user enters the password correctly, and if he enters it wrong, then it will indicate properly that you have entered the wrong password. It should, because the password is something which is protected, and it is private to that user. So you cannot do it in a unconscious manner, and the create a issue later. So that is one thing which we should keep in mind. So we should ensure that the user is focused, and we should give a proper feedback if something wrong happens. Next slide, Abhinand. So yeah, here if you can see this design example, the Twitter example, so it reduces the submission error for form validation. So here if you can see the input form validation, it is making sure that the format is correct. Like the email address, the person has just given ABC@, and it is saying that please enter a valid email, because we want that the user doesn't give any wrong information. And when we need that information from the user later, then it should not be that we are not able to fetch that information too. And your password must be of 6 characters at least. So this is another validation which we need to do. Like we should ensure that it is the password is protected and it is strong. So it is a it is the like, what do you say, it's the developer or the software developers, it is the responsibility of the software developer who should ensure that the user you should think from the user's perspective and see that if they make mistake like this, what can I do to fix that error, or what kind of indications I can give. And the server validation here would be that validation check. Correct, exactly. So you are validating the user's actions. Sometimes we get OTP. So what is the OTPs? They are basically checking if we are the person who are doing the transaction. So it is a side from the developer that they want that the user is validated properly. So from a design perspective, we want to see that the users perform that action based on their knowledge and verification. Correct. So server validation is checking the username and password is correct or not. So as a designer, we should ensure that we follow these guidelines and like this password protection and valid email ID, etc. So yeah, this is about principle 5, tolerance to error. Now next principle will be explained by Abhinand. Yeah,
Okay,
thank you.
thank you. Kalap. So I will talk about the next principle. So if you look at these two pictures, so what do you understand? Like in the first picture, like if remember long back, we used to have some keys to open the door, right? So you are taking too much strength to open the door. But nowadays you have some uh, lever handles to open the door. So you are taking less strength to open the door. And the second one is it is automatic sync. So you don't have to keep continuously open the tab and yeah, yes. So that means you are not giving too much effort to open the tab. You are giving such simple movement of your hand. So it is called no physical effort. So that means you should not give the user too much train to open the or use the design, right? So we have to give them minimum fatigue to use the design. Yeah. Okay. So from a software perspective, so there's a feature called action grouping. So you should design your web page so that the user does not uh, keep alternating going up and down the page or switch from one window to another and back. You should not design it like that. You should keep a seamless flow of control to the user. So not going from proper up to down direction so that you don't put too much effort in moving your mouse or switching apps, right? And yeah, and another one is minimize requests. I think we must have heard of Windows 8 design. Have you heard of the design? Yeah, in Windows 8, it was taking so much time to search for a shutdown button, right? Yeah. So it's like you're clicking one button to go another button, and you're clicking that button to go to the next one. So you're taking long flow to go to that what you want. So you should not design it like that. So you should minimize the number of controls to go there. Yeah. It's similar to Xlog. Yeah, okay. So but this principle says we should not give too much repetitive action to the user to get what they want. Yeah. So that basically getting less effort to go and you should maintain a neutral body position so that it's like it's like it does not keep moving from one position to go another position and come back to get what they want. So you should get same position and get what they want. Yes. And another example is like almost many applications use keyboard shortcuts. Yes. So that the user does not keep tracking the mouse all the time, right? So the user should have a stable position to keep on the keyboard and just get what action they want. So what can become less effective, get what they want. Yeah. So that keyboard shortcut is an important example for whenever you are designing application or a web page. Okay. And the last principle can be anyone type in the chat what it is. Okay. So basically, after ergonomics. Yes, exactly. Yeah. So any other. Yeah. So yes, exactly. So Rocky become freedom to move around, and there should be space irrespective of uh, body position, body size. So irrespective of that, we should provide space to everyone. Yeah. So there is a category of design called ergonomics. So basically, it is about how much the user as a limit to move. So, but not everyone has the same limit. So we need to design for a wide range so that everyone has freedom to move. However they work, however they use. Okay. So in the software perspective, we are providing action targets. This one I will explain in the next slide. And there's another called poster. So we need to design for user no matter how the user is sitting. Because the user is not always on the chair or he's standing around or he's lie down on the bed. So you can lie down and use a mobile, right? So we need to design irrespective of whatever the user is, whatever position the user is. And the other one is called dynamic space. So, like in the mobile phone, you have something like keyboard shot, so keyboard. So you are giving like a keyboard in the bottom of the phone, right? So, so that the top part of the phone is your application, your code. So we should design such that like a keyboard should not cover the entire phone. You should not block your code. Yeah. So like another example is the drop-down menus. So we are giving a shorter drop-down menu so that the rest of the screen is not blocked by it. So you can see the screen and the menu. Yeah. So that's the guideline for. So you should keep a clear line of sight to any lead or standard user. But I've told you that posture example. Mobile is an excellent example of this because it is portable and you can take it to wherever you want. Yeah. And you should reach. Yeah, you should reach all components like a street. You should not block your entire work. Like for example, you are watching a presentation and you have a chat window here. It's on the separate side of the screen so that you can see the chat screen and the presentation at the same time. Yeah. So the chat screen does not entirely block the presentation. So well, easy to good things. Yeah, you should. Yeah, that's something called hand and hip size. That I will explain it in the slide. Yeah, you should. You should organize it to accommodate all how the user already and how the user is performing the action. Yeah. So I've told you about action targets. So it's an excellent example. Like in the laptop or a desktop, we have a mouse. You can easily use a mouse to click a button. You can move the mouse, click small button, large button. But in the mobile, your finger is this size. You cannot actually click the small close button in at screen. So you should design some sufficient space for closing the app. And you should, however, you are already your mobile, you should not train your finger to reach the top button. So you should organize the space and put the button here so it's easy for the user to click the button. So that's what this principle is about. So I hope you all got the 7 principles. So let me pick the example. So I want you to type into chat or unmute whatever to tell what this design, which principles this design has. So this design will wrap some containers and you can easily close the doors by a push of a button or you can open it by the same push of a button. So push principle it is. If you don't remember push principle, uh, no, my question is among the 7 principles, which principle this design is?
Yeah, so basically he's asking like for that image that push down, push up a button. Basically the button gets pushed and then like it makes like a app takes it. So he's just asking like which of these principles are applicable to this particular design
That's excellent.
effort.
Just start energy. So yeah, what is the important principle in this? So you can also have something that indicated exactly. Yeah, it's very simple and intuitive to use. So because if you see a push button, you know that it is simple to use, right? Yeah, so these are the two main principles here. So another example is we have Google Translate. So can anyone tell what principle it is? Yeah, example just together. Okay. Yeah, okay. What about the second example? Yeah, flexible, yes. You have customizability to choose whatever input you want. Yeah, you can type with the keyboard. You can take image of your translation, so anything you can use. And also, it is you have a size and space because the top part of the screen is input part and the bottom part of the screen is the output part. So you have a proper space between typing and you can write your input. So actually this example has all the principles. Yeah, can anyone tell why it has all the principles? I will type in the chat about why it has all the principles. So yeah, it is perceptible because you are can be I got to happy with the like I got a camera and it is equitable because you can perform touch to speech speech disability also. So and you can change your language whatever you want. So all range of users can use this app. Yeah, and everything is what is mentioned in the text. Okay, so we move on. Okay, so let's so we have a case study on universal decision. So the first case study called Narakumar, right? It is the Spanish railway system which was started in 2005. So they wanted welcoming and easy to use environment for all type of users, like old people, young people, and disability people. So So what they have done is they went through the entire design process. So they have got the user requirement, the concept design, and evaluation. So they went through the iterative process, and they also upgraded the 7 principles of universal design, and they came up with different features of the railway system. The first picture is they are given a safety measure along the walls between the platform and the track. So they have put the walls to prevent users, passengers to fall out of the platform. And if you can see, the orange lighting system. Yeah. So in the orange light, we are giving the user some idea that the doors are going to be here, and they can get into the train and come out in that location. Also, between the platform and the seats, we have given a huge wide space for passenger to park. Right. And the second is we have made it user friendly for the user also. So they gave a wide space for the user to pass through the paths. So it is also equitable to use. And other one is she will also add some diverse users. So like old people, visual people, and pregnant women also. So they are given accessibility to everyone in the bathrooms. Right. So it's very easy for these users to use. Yeah. And it also very flexible to use because we are giving option to standardization and how they want to wash the, how they want to clean the hands. So, and other one, we have already discussed the example before. So this is a perceptive information example. So yeah, the railways, we have color coded each of the station with some color and a symbol. So we have foreign people, we have like Indian people, Italian people, whatever. So irrespective of the language or where they come from, they can easily locate which station they want to get out because of the symbol and the color. And the last one is so the next one is very less effort for people to move from the door to the lift. Yeah. So welcome at very close proximity to the door. And other one is also another example of effect. So we are giving a comfortable to small people and future people to use the car systems. Yeah, so it's very user friendly and less complicated to facilitate smoother ticketing booking. And the next one is for visual impairment people who are giving rail systems to along the station, along the railway lines. So almost all of the railway station, we have put in a code along the path so blind people can easily navigate around the station. And the other one is very between the platform and the train. There is a low gap between the platform and the train, so diverse user of person can easily move through the transportation to the train. So it's a safety measure and it's equity use. So yeah, so I hope you all got the 7 principles. So if you want to know more about it, you can go to the we will show the PPT also. You can go to the so yeah. So let's summarize what we have done so far. So the principle of universal design is mainly aimed to as a result to help accessible designs for everyone. Yeah, so it will help consider the needs of all users in general. So yeah, that's what the universal design is about. And also you can watch a YouTube video on how universal design is done in architecture design of a campus. Well, this campus was designed to make it easier to use for everyone, blind people, wheelchair people, and some motor disabilities, everything. So you can go through this YouTube video and also so far the 7 principles were planning as a current way of doing. So there is a other group of people who have redefined the input into a more practical approach. Right? So they call it goals of universal design. So in the 8 goals they have gone through like different comfort, everything, and also we have included one more goal called culture appropriate. So because the first 7 principles was done in Western norms, so it was done to include the culture of the users. So you can go through this link whenever you are free after the workshop or after the session. Okay, so that's all we have done for this session, and we will meet in the after the lunch break for practical session. Okay, if you have any questions.
Yeah, if anyone has any doubts or any questions, please ask. Okay, so I guess examples were self-explanatory. Thank you everyone. Thank you so much. Yeah. Yeah. So
Thank you.
if no one has any doubts for now, we can continue after lunch break. The case
Now,
studies. Yeah. Yeah.
one
Tell.
question like this: do you have any kind of an certification agency that whatever the UI you are design, it is certified for particular domain or particular stuff. Like we certified like ISO for the industry, for a particular organization, for particular stuff. So in the software design, do you have any kind of a certification?
No, actually, there are no certifications for this, but there are few guidelines. Like there is a Nielsen normal group, so they have given these few guidelines which are available, which we should follow. But yeah, there are no certifications as such, as far as I remember. Yeah.
So you got my question. So for
Yeah.
example, if you have a particular gadget or something, right? So you
Yeah.
need to have certified from the safety agency, or that if you have some fintech stuff, they need to be certified from the, let's say in India, we are Reserve Bank of India, RBI has to certify that particular. So on that stuff, you design, user design, UI design should be certified by some agency. So any kind of stuff, no, there is no exist.
No, as far as I remember, I don't think there are no agencies like that. Yeah. So users' response is the best certification. Yeah. So the feedbacks from the yeah,
Okay.
because the user will only be using. So from the design perspective, there is no guidelines as such. But like you told, this RBI for fintech, yeah. So that exists. So like that.
Yeah.
Is
So
there.
similarly for the design, you are
Yeah,
design.
it is currently there is no, as far as I remember. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Any other doubts, anyone? Please feel free to ask.
So in the afternoon session, we'll continue with another case study, and then we'll also show how to work with Figma a little bit, and along with the case study. So do tune in for that also. So it'll be really
Yes.
interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think that's it, people. So Shivaselvan sir, I think yeah, we can go for lunch break. I think so.
Yeah, thank you, Kaushik, Pranav, Abhinan. We'll wind up this session. Next session
Okay.
will start by 2:30 p.m.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you,
Thank
ma'am.
you all.
Thank you all.
Thank you.